Brought to you by Thomas Allgaier and Frennis. This adjourn highlights key LinkedIn posts on future mobility and market evolution in weeks 9 and 10. Frennis supports enterprises with market and competitive intelligence, decoding disruptive technologies, customer needs, regulatory change, and competitive moves so product teams and strategy leaders don't just react, but shape the future of mobility.
So for this deep dive, we're really digging into the conversations that have been absolutely dominating the mobility space over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And if you're out there building a product or maybe managing strategy in this sector, you've probably noticed a pretty massive shift in tone recently.
Definitely. I mean, we are moving away from the poor technology hype, those theoretical promises of what mobility could look like.
Right, the visionary stuff.
Exactly. And we're entering an era that just demands proof of unit economics, proof of safety, and honestly, proof that these vehicles actually fit into existing urban policy.
Yeah, the rubber is finally hitting the road. So our goal today is to cut through all the noise from late February and early March to pull out the actionable insights you actually need.
We're going to look at the harsh realities facing autonomous vehicles, the really expensive growing pains of the micromobility sector.
Oh, yeah.
And the digital nervous systems that are quietly trying to manage our cities.
Let's jump straight into the autonomous vehicle landscape because the narrative here is experiencing some severe whiplash right now.
It really is.
On one side of the spectrum, you have someone like Dennis Callinan putting out these massive deep tech projections. He's looking at the current trajectory and projecting that autonomous driving companies could hit trillion-dollar valuations by 2035.
$1 trillion.
Right. And his argument rests on the idea that robotaxis will see such widespread adoption that operators will eventually just control the entire passenger mobility loop.
Effectively replacing traditional car ownership. But, $1 trillion valuation implies a flawless path to scale, which feels incredibly optimistic when you look at the current cash burn of these companies.
Yeah, how do they justify getting from today's heavily subsidized testing environments to that kind of market cap?
That is exactly the question Tomas Gabor raised, and it is a severe reality check. He argues that robotaxis won't become a bankable, investable asset class until the industry fundamentally changes how it reports its progress.
Because right now, they're acting like R&D projects.
Exactly. They boast about manufacturing capacity or just the sheer number of vehicles in a fleet, but they go completely silent on the actual operating economics.
Which is the most important part. Gabor insists the industry has to disclose transparent metrics. Specifically, what he calls the cost per autonomous revenue mile.
I love that metric.
It's brilliant, right? It strips away all the AI hype and forces you to look at the physical business.
Right.
He points out that empty miles, so the time a vehicle spends driving without a paying passenger, they aren't just a side effect of the service.
No.
They're a massive tax on the entire operation.
Think about the physical mechanics of that for a second. Every single mile that a robotaxi drives empty to pick someone up, it is burning energy, wearing down tires, requiring network bandwidth.
Yeah.
That is pure cost sitting right there in the numerator of your balance sheet. But the denominator, the metric where you actually generate revenue, that only ticks up when a passenger is physically sitting in the back seat.
Right. And if operators can't dramatically improve that ratio, they aren't running a highly scalable tech platform. They're running a deeply unprofitable taxi service.
Well, and Gabor also highlights the hidden infrastructure costs. If you deploy 10,000 vehicles in a city, you suddenly need a small power plant's worth of secured grid capacity just to keep them charged.
And then there's the human element of remote supervision.
Oh, man.
I mean, if a company's ratio of remote supervisors to active vehicles is, say, 1 to 20 instead of 1 to 200, the margin profile looks like a high-touch human service.
Not an autonomous machine.
Exactly.
And that remote supervision bottleneck is already causing real-world friction. Philip Koopman posted about a highly public incident in San Francisco recently.
Oh, the ambulance thing.
Yes. A Waymo robotaxi blocked an ambulance at an active emergency scene. The vehicle attempted a U-turn, got stuck crossways in the street, and effectively just froze.
It needed a police officer to physically get into the vehicle to move it out of the way, right?
Exactly. And the implications of that incident are profound for anyone designing these systems. Koopman points out that police officers have much more critical duties at an emergency scene than acting as tech support for a stuck robotaxi.
Seriously?
And looking forward, as these vehicles evolve to remove the steering wheel and pedals entirely, how will a human officer even move them in a crisis?
It strongly suggests that companies are pushing for nationwide expansion without having a robust enough remote operator capability to manage those time-critical edge cases.
It's an incredible contrast to what Josh Orenstein shared out of Finland.
This was fascinating.
Right. While the industry here is debating how much on-vehicle computing power is required to navigate around an ambulance, Finland is solving the exact same problem with zero AI and zero venture capital.
They're just rolling out automated traffic lights.
Simple as that. They detect an approaching emergency vehicle and just turn the light green.
It is the perfect juxtaposition. I mean, Silicon Valley is trying to solve urban mobility with complex on-vehicle compute, while Europe is solving it with simple environmental infrastructure.
Ornstein noted that this pilot ran across 700 intersections.
Wow.
Yeah, with 300 emergency vehicles, and it resulted in 0 accidents. It clears the path safely and saves lives without disrupting the city.
It really forces you to ask why we consistently overlook these highly effective low-tech solutions in favor of algorithmic complexity.
I mean, if you put yourself in the shoes of a European city planner, the skepticism toward AVs makes complete sense.
It does. Sebastian Obeda posed a fundamental question to the industry. He asked, what problem are robotaxis actually meant to solve? Because in many dense European cities, point-to-point mobility is not the primary issue. Citizens can already move efficiently via extensive public transit networks, cycling infrastructure, walkable streets.
The actual constraints are physical space and congestion. Dropping thousands of 2-ton autonomous vehicles into that environment doesn't solve the space problem.
No, it exacerbates it.
Exactly.
And if a technology arrives to solve a problem that a city doesn't have, it functions as pressure, not progress.
Bojan Djukic echoed this warning loudly. He argues that cities have to proactively manage their curb space and establish waiting rules right now.
Because if a city doesn't dictate where these AVs can park or where they can loiter during off-peak hours or how they interact with dedicated burst lanes,
They will quickly become self-driving traffic jams.
Djukic explicitly warns that without immediate policy intervention, we risk repeating the micromobility chaos of 2017, where hardware was just dumped onto the streets long before the rules were ready.
But look, regardless of the pushback, the market penetration is happening. Kirsten Heineke highlighted some fascinating McKinsey data showing that Waymo's pricing in San Francisco is rapidly converging with traditional human ride-hailing.
Really?
Yeah. Between April 2025 and the end of the year, Waymo's average fare actually dropped by about 3.6%. Meanwhile, Uber's fares increased by 12% and Lyft's by 7%.
Wow, so the price gap is practically vanishing.
And when price parity is achieved, consumer choice is going to shift dramatically.
And that expansion isn't just restricted to the US and China. Peter Pavlenko noted that Pony.ai, one of the Chinese autonomous driving leaders, they're partnering with Stellantis and Bolt to bring level 4 testing to European roads.
And just to clarify for the listener, level 4 testing means these vehicles are operating fully autonomously without human intervention, but within strictly defined geofenced areas.
Right. And they're starting in Luxembourg with a progressive rollout plan for 2026. The technology is advancing, whether urban infrastructure is perfectly prepared to host it or not.
Which is a perfect transition into our next focus area, the maturation of micromobility.
Oh, talk about an industry that had to learn brutal, expensive lessons about urban geometry.
Seriously, just look at the scooter and e-bike operators. The sector is no longer focused on flooding sidewalks with vehicles just to grab market share. The conversation has entirely shifted to integration, quality, and unit economics.
The shift from theoretical hype to hardware reality is profound. You brought up an incredibly candid post from Frederick Helm, the head of Oi.
Yeah, he openly detailed a $10 million mistake the company made back in 2019.
Ouch.
Right. To build momentum, they rushed a launch of 10,000 new scooters into Germany. And within 3 days, they realized the vehicles were fundamentally flawed.
They were uncomfortable for riders, and the structural integrity was just failing under real-world use.
Think about the sheer logistical nightmare and the cash burn of that scenario. You launch 10,000 physical assets to dominate a market, and within 72 hours, you realize you have to recall and recycle the entire fleet.
It is a brutal lesson in the realities of hardware. Helm's takeaway is vital for any product team listening to this. You cannot patch hardware the way you patch software.
No. In software, moving fast and breaking things is a strategy. In hardware, dropping a vehicle on a city street is a 10-year commitment.
Oliver Terrell echoed this perfectly. He stated that modern operators demand what he calls software-defined hardware. These vehicles have to be incredibly robust, constantly connected, and ergonomically designed for the specific rigors of a city environment.
And alongside that hardware maturation, we're seeing user behavior fundamentally change.
Lars Christian Gridem-Olsen shared some 2025 data from Voice showing that nearly 40% of their total revenue now comes from subscriptions and daily passes.
40%.
And that segment grew by 65% year over year. This is a critical metric because it proves micromobility has successfully transitioned from a novelty service for tourists into a dependable daily habit for commuters.
Bram Sues backed this up with some truly impressive data out of Belgium. The number of shared e-scooters on the streets actually dropped by 35%, yet the total number of rides increased by 21%.
That is the ultimate definition of operational maturity.
Exactly. They're doing more with less, drastically increasing the utilization rate of their existing assets rather than just dumping more hardware onto the sidewalk to chase growth.
But, maximizing utilization doesn't eliminate the friction at the curb. Thomas Broughton argues that the industry still needs to solve the parking problem. He's advocating for a shift from reactive to proactive certainty.
Because right now, most systems just rely on GPS and require users to take a photo of the parked scooter after the ride ends.
Right, which is reactive. Broughton is pushing for camera-based, AI-driven verification integrated directly into the vehicle. It confirms parking compliance in real time before the ride can even be terminated.
And stops the sidewalk clutter from happening in the first place.
Exactly. And policymakers are finally beginning to meet the industry halfway to create clear frameworks.
Jacqueline Youngblood and Christopher Carter recently helped release a massive report from the Massachusetts Special Commission on Micromobility.
Finally.
Yeah, instead of relying on blanket bans or just ignoring the sector entirely, the commission delivered 16 actionable recommendations. They're doing the hard regulatory work.
Like legally defining different devices by their maximum speed and setting default urban speed limits. It provides a predictable environment for both operators and the public.
Though the contrast in how different regions are handling this transition is striking. Jim Hubbard is urgently calling for the UK to finally end its e-scooter trial limbo by 2026.
They need permanent, clear legislation so businesses can actually plan their investments.
Meanwhile, Tomas Veloso highlighted a shocking difference in mentality. Iowa is currently proposing legislation to ban bicycles on most roads with speed limits over 25 miles per hour.
Effectively criminalizing cycling on main routes.
Right. Compare that to Europe, which is investing heavily in cycling infrastructure and generating hundreds of millions of euros in annual public health and mobility benefits.
Yeah. It is wild to observe such a divergence in transport philosophy.
It really is.
And we can't discuss the evolution of smaller urban vehicles without noting the explosion of the microcar segment.
Yes. Gaio Buosi highlighted a massive boom in the Netherlands for vehicles like the Citroën Ami and the Silence SO4.
These enclosed, low-speed electric vehicles, they offer weather protection and cargo space, but they have a tiny physical footprint.
They are absolutely perfect for those short 5-kilometer urban trips. Situations where deploying a full-size 2-ton SUV is simply an absurd over-allocation of space and energy.
The rise of the microcar directly challenges our default assumptions about what a vehicle needs to be in an urban core, which naturally leads us to look at the broader ecosystem.
Right, the system level.
With robotaxis, shared e-bikes, microcars, and traditional public transit all operating simultaneously, how does a city prevent total systemic failure?
Hashim El-Faterji provided a very clear answer to that. He argues the real power layer of modern mobility is no longer the physical hardware. The power lies in the software ecosystems.
He's talking about mobility as a service, or MaaS platforms, right?
Exactly. Platforms that integrate different transport modes into a single consumer app, and Fleet SaaS, the software as a service layer that operators use to manage their vehicles.
El-Faterji argues that controlling the data, the payment gateways, and the system integration is where long-term value compounds. Hardware depreciates the moment it hits the street, but software platforms scale infinitely.
But for a city to actually govern this ecosystem, Remy K stresses that municipalities desperately need real-time system visibility.
Because historically, city planners only realize there's a problem with shared fleet density when the public starts calling in complaints about blocked sidewalks.
Exactly. If cities integrated with these software platforms to access real-time data on parking pressure and high-demand corridors, they could manage conditions proactively through dynamic pricing or routing.
Rather than just reacting months later with blunt fleet caps or outright bans.
There is a physical component to this integration as well. Ben Van Berkel emphasized that the concept of a mobility hub, a physical location where you can seamlessly switch from a train to an e-bike or a car share, it only works if the architecture is beautifully and intuitively designed.
Makes sense. If a hub feels dark, confusing, or unsafe, commuter adoption will flatline, regardless of how good the app is.
Andrew Firmston Williams offered a highly creative logistical twist on physical infrastructure, actually. He noted the rapid growth of the 20 to 60-minute grocery delivery sector.
Okay.
Because supermarkets are already serving as the operational anchors for fleets of e-cargo bikes and mopeds, their car parks are perfectly positioned to become decentralized, urban battery swapping and rapid charging hubs.
That is smart. Instead of building new charging infrastructure from scratch, you embed it directly inside the existing operational flow of the riders.
It's a brilliant way to leverage existing real estate. But we also have to address the human element that is driving the need for all these systems. Congestion.
The biggest headache of all.
Judith Haberly shared a staggering statistic regarding the physical limits of our roads. Last year, traffic jams on Swiss national roads jumped by 13.9%.
And she notes that this increase wasn't driven by construction delays. It was almost entirely due to sheer volume. The streets are simply full.
Her takeaway is that the solution cannot be paving more lanes. The solution requires employers to step up, offering flexible work schedules, organizing carpooling platforms, and providing intelligent mobility budgets that incentivize employees to leave their private cars at home.
Nicolas Verstraete brought in supporting data from Belgium's latest homework travel survey that proves these behavioral shifts are possible. While the private car remains the dominant mode of commuting, the rate of cycling to work has doubled overall.
And in Brussels, it has increased almost 8-fold over the last 20 years.
The survey also noted an explosion in electric company cars. This data proves that sustainable corporate mobility policies are no longer just an HR perk. They're an essential lever for talent recruitment and overall operational efficiency.
To bring all of these threads together, we have to look at the capital markets. Erwin Kuzinet and Joram Wijngaard both analyzed the current venture capital landscape.
Yeah, noting that European mobility VC funding is significantly cooling down from its post-COVID peaks.
In fact, Europe's share of global mobility funding has been cut in half since 2019.
But it's crucial to understand that this cooldown is not a signal of sector failure.
Not at all.
The mobility industry is maturing. Investors are shifting their capital away from wild, speculative innovation and demanding execution, operational excellence, and clear paths to profitability.
Europe still possesses a massive natural advantage due to its high urban density and historic public transport infrastructure. What the industry requires right now is conviction from investors as the market navigates the difficult transition from early-stage hype into scalable, profitable market penetration.
It is genuinely fascinating to see how all these moving parts, the harsh unit economics of a robotaxi, the structural integrity of a scooter, the data layers managing the curb, and the VC funding environment, how they're all forcing a complete reimagining of the urban landscape.
They absolutely are. And that brings me to a final provocative thought I want to leave you with, inspired by a post from Bern Grush.
Okay.
When industry professionals discuss the future of urban mobility, it is very easy to fall into extremes. We either envision a clean, perfectly optimized robotaxi utopia where private car ownership is obsolete, or a dystopian gridlock of isolated single-occupancy vehicles.
Grush points out that neither of those extremes will materialize anytime soon.
Exactly. Instead, what we are facing is a messy, decades-long mixed transition. We are entering an era where highly advanced autonomous fleets, unpredictable human-driven cars, microcars, and vulnerable cyclists must all fight to share the exact same physical curb space.
So this raises a critical question for you, the listener, as you evaluate your own product roadmaps. Is your strategy built exclusively for the clean theoretical endpoint of 2035?
Or is your business actively prepared to navigate and monetize the messy middle that is unfolding on our streets right now?
If you enjoyed this episode, new episodes drop every 2 weeks. Also check out our other editions on electrification and battery technology, next-gen vehicle intelligence, and commercial fleet insights.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, and remember to subscribe so you stay ahead of the curve on the future of mobility.